Welcome back to Night Flight. Today we have James True back on Night Flight, and my little cat here is disturbing us. So his bio will be in the description box. He is the author of several books. The latest one is The Technology of Belief. His website is jtrue.com, and I'm very happy to have him here. So James, welcome.
Oh, it's great to see you again. Thanks for having me, Judith.
Yeah. So I heard that you sold your first screenplay. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've sold copies of my screenplay. Yeah. 20 people have have bought my screenplay so far, which is great. For the most people who write a screenplay never even get it seen. So
yeah. Congratulations.
Thanks. It's a really fun thing to write. Actually, I've never written anything in that genre. You know, it's always just been books.
May I ask what it's about?
Yeah, it's so I would say the setting of the screenplay is that what we're calling when Christopher Columbus discovered America is of course all a sham, and so this screenplay is a speculation about maybe what was here before he came. And so we talk about, basically it's about giants, and it's about a race of giants that lived here before that time, and how the cabal came over under the Knights Templar with all their ships, and basically cleared the country and turned it into a slave farm where it was colonized by a penal colony, which would be America. And so amnesia has been installed by erasing history of this land, and it's been renamed. And by renaming the land something like North Carolina or South Carolina, what you're really doing is erasing what it used to be called, which is Katua. So the screenplay is called Man from Katua, and it's about an amnesiac wild man who's living in the wild, who befriends a giant. The giant himself has also suffered from amnesia and has really sort of turned into a Sasquatch. He himself is a living Bigfoot because he's forgotten who he is. So he's kind of turned himself back into a wildling. And it's the story of how they both got that way. And one of the principal characters is sort of a John Rockefeller type character. And it explains how the skull and bones thing ties into amnesia. So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there's at least 30, there's more like probably like 60 verses in the Old Testament that talk specifically about bone technology. I'm talking about, for example, I need you to go into this town and kill everyone, but take their bones and pulverize them into a powder, and then place that powder on top of their altars to reset, to make their God angry, that kind of thing. Or during Passover, be sure to never break the goat's bones that you're going to eat, but instead leave them whole. Or, take your ancestor, and break his bones, and then do this. It's a speculative piece that when we tap into our ancestors, our DNA line, we no longer are amnesiatic. We remember. By remembering our ancestors, we remember who we are. And the amnesia is something that's really a gelding program. It's amputating us. It's neutering us, basically, and making us forget, which makes it easier to set us up as a slave colony now, or timeshare cropping. Because what we have now is a timeshare cropping system where all of us are required to pay a certain percentage of our labor to an invisible force, but we are under enough mind control where none of us understand that that's literally sharecropping for our own time, and that's a form of slavery. And so it's a sort of a screenplay that's just kind of highlighting and accenting that, but in a very action adventure-y kind of a way. So right now, the only way to see it is to actually be a Patreon of mine. It's one of the perks that we give as far as like what we're doing. And the whole time while we're doing that, we're also filming these local documentaries. We did one last month, which is basically where it's a documentary about sovereignty, where we're finding a lot of reenactors, Civil War reenactors. These are people that study history and go relive history, you know, and they'll like stage a battle from a long ago. I've noticed that these people know a lot more of American history than what we're taught in school. And they seem to have a better grip over the truth of where we came from and where we're going. So the screenplay is sort of an overarching umbrella for this documentary project that we're doing. So we've released one so far. We just did some footage last weekend for a second one. We've found some revolutionary music players that played old time original music. And so we got some great footage of them. That'll be in our next documentary. All the documentaries are free to the public. We're releasing those as free. And then if those were to raise money, we would be using that for this screenplay for this film to basically produce that, which would cost us a lot of money because that's going to need actors and a set and things like that and costumes and stuff like that. So that's sort of the general plan of what we got cooking this year.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. And people can purchase that screenplay?
Yeah. If you go to my website for $22, I'll mail you a signed copy. Or if you're a Patreon, you get a free copy. If you want a printed copy, I mail you one. You got to give me a couple bucks for postage, or you can download it for free on my Patreon page. So those are a couple of different ways to get a hold of the screenplay. And hopefully in a couple of years it'll be made and people can, you know, go see it. Who knows? We've had a few producers that seem interested in it. We'll just have to see how it goes. There's some very controversial scenes that I've written into there. The first one in particular, which goes back 5,000 years ago, and there's Kabbalists that are dragging giant bones, like the bones of giants, and putting them into this pit, and then they're covering the pit. And that's not just a speculative story. There's something called the Cave of the Patriarchs, which is a real live thing. And inside of there are the bones of Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, and some Islamic figures too. And I find it really interesting that we have the bones, the misplaced bones of Judaic religious patriarchal figures and Islamic patriarchal figures buried inside the same cave. This Cave of the Patriarchy is probably the second most important religious site to Judaism, second only to the temple itself. And I find it fascinating that inside that cave, which you can go see now, they have placed a seal, like a cork, on top of that cave. And this is what's really given me the idea about this technology of bones, that there seems to be something to this technology. And to even push that further, I think it has something to do with resonance. A tuning fork struck in C sharp will cause another tuning fork in C sharp to sound. And I'm under the impression that the DNA in our ancestors' bones has that same resonant frequency, where I can tap into the power of my own ancestors, but maybe not someone else's because I'm in a different key. My DNA is sort of its own key signature in music. And if all these theories are true, it would make sense as to why they've invested so much money and effort and time and blood into covering up bones or doing something with bones, either pulverizing them or pushing us into cremation even. That there could be a lot of reasons behind this that we just simply don't understand because we don't remember what it was like back when we could actually tap into our ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Great. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of research that's happening all around that. And of course, I write about that all the time. So it's not even like you have to wait for the screenplay. You know, the bone technology is something I'm looking into pretty in depth right now. But not right now this month. This month I've been just so busy. But as soon as I get back into the normal routine, that'll be more, I'll pick that back up and look more into that. I find it fascinating. There's something about the technology of bones that we don't know anymore that we used to.
Yeah.
I feel certain of that. And it's not just Old Testament, by the way. I just use that example. There's a lot of ancient scripture. Yeah.
So at the end of last year, I had a couple of interviews with different people talking about the energies of 2020 and that it will be a very interesting year. And boy, it is. And I'm so happy that we did it before 2020 happened, that it is on record. So for me personally, it started with this half-baked initiative to impeach Trump in the middle of December. That to me felt very cartoonish somehow. Then the beginning of January, we had the alleged assassination of Mr. Soleimani, if that happened. Then Iran retaliated, but Trump tweeted, yeah, everything is okay. So far, so good. All is good. Now, almost 3 weeks later, we are up to 50 injuries, 50 people injured. So, oh, you mean Trump lied to me? Yes, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Okay, and then connected to that, there was this hype, oh, World War III, hashtag World War III, and then that died down. So now, no, you do not get to rest. We have coronavirus for you. Now you can start panicking. And, for me, it's very hard to figure out what's really going on there. Everything is possible, I have to say. Everything and anything. It might be that they are not reporting, that the numbers are much higher, or that it's overhyped. And then we have that China stole the virus from Canada and weaponized it. And although I guess a lot of people already know there is a biolab right in Wuhan that operated with the most dangerous pathogens. No, it was a bat and a snake. Yeah. And the cherry on the cake for me was this so-called peace plan. I knew about it, that they wanted to announce it yesterday, or no, Tuesday. And I knew also that, okay, Mr. Kushner is involved, so I didn't have high expectations that, you know, the Chabad Lubavitch puppet Kushner, that, but I sat down and I listened to the live feed of what Netanyahu and Trump had to say. And then I looked at the audience and I thought, that's strange. There's not one Palestinian there. No, it's even worse. They didn't even bother to talk to them while, you know, drawing up this peace plan. Yeah. So I wanted to have your take on that. Let's start at the beginning.
So impeachment.
Yeah.
I'm going to read you an email I got from Donald Trump. He didn't obviously address this to me personally, although he does use my name in it. But it says, James, I'll get straight to the point. We are just one day away from our first critical fundraising deadline of 2020, and we need to ensure we reach our $3 million goal. Democrats and the fake news have been working nonstop to spread their lies and attacks against President Trump. That's why we need you, James, to start 2020 off strong and send a message to the radical left that the American people stand behind President Trump. This is so urgent that we've just been authorized to triple match all contributions until midnight tonight. Contribute as much as you can tonight, James. We have to reach our $3 million goal. So What I'm trying to illustrate here is that impeachment is a profitable activity for both sides, and it's a rallying activity for both sides. Impeachment helps Trump, it helps Pelosi, it helps everyone in Washington, and it ends up with a lot of people are saying now who are on the Trump is a magic savior who's here to fix things. They're using the exact same excuse they were using back with Mueller when the Mueller investigation went on for 2 years, which was, as soon as we get past this Mueller, then the heads are going to roll, the truth's going to come out, the clouds are going to part, and the truth is going to set us all free. But until then, all Trump can do is keep lying, James. You have to understand how important it is that Trump keeps lying during Mueller. But after Mueller, then it's done. And then right when Mueller's done, he just didn't say it quick enough because then the impeachment started. So now we're stuck in this impeachment. But I tell you, James, after this impeachment, it's going to happen. And this is what I face every day in the trenches as I try and argue with people and convert people into sovereignty. I'm trying to convert people from Trump into sovereignty, where they're back into sovereignty again. And people are simply not seeing it, because when they hear that he's going to be impeached, they A, believe it, and B, automatically run to his side to try and give him aid, because they're under the impression that what Trump says is true. Trump is trying to tell you, and Zionism itself is trying to tell you the same thing, which is that God has decided that there's only a small group of people. Out of all the people that God made, only a small group of them does he like. The rest of them can burn in hell. In fact, they're going to, and they're going to move them off their property, destroy their heritage, or erase their bones, destroy their ancestry, because Zionism is so much more important than that. And it really, really does show just how completely under Stockholm Syndrome the entire nation is. Because it's, even if you hate Trump or if you love Trump, you're still under the same Stockholm Syndrome of it, by believing that this is real, by believing that what he's talking about is even legitimate. I don't think any of this is legitimate at all. I think all of these things are very carefully orchestrated plans, which go back to General Wesley Clark, who told us in a memo 5 years ago, Iran will be last. Iran is coming. We're going to take over Iran. We're going to overthrow Iran. And it's really difficult to hear people still praise Trump and still watch him overthrow Iran and still insist to me that Trump overthrowing Iran is not the same as if the NWO was throwing over Iran. That somehow if Trump does it, it's okay. But if Barack Obama did it, then it would be bad. And this just shows you just how elementary and how much we've been reduced to children as we follow politics more and more, which is why I follow politics less and less and try and talk about it less and less, because I still see things like this. Like, James, you have to give us money tonight. Literally, the most powerful person in the world is claiming me, James True, a guy that can barely pay my bills, has to give him money so that he can stay alive and not fall prey to the evil, vicious attacks of what they're doing. Meanwhile, he's literally assassinating Iranians inside the country of Iraq, doing that. While tens of thousands of Iraqis are protesting him, saying, you're wrong. And the entire time he's insisting that he's a liberator, that he is a savior, that he is the Messiah for this. And his Mashiach, Jared Kushner, is here to fix everything and has already done so just by being born, basically. That Kushner is going to solve everything by burning Palestine. There's simply both sides agree to the same core principles. Palestine must be destroyed in order for America to be protected. And impeachment is a logical thing that's happening right now. Mueller is a logical thing that's happening right now. And everything that's happening is real. And none of it's real. This is all a myth. And the China thing is really starting to come to fruition, which scares me, because we're in the dark on China. There's not an American that I know of in my personal network that is informed on what's really happening in China. I find it impossible for you to really know what's happening in China. Not only is there a language barrier, you simply are not being given enough data. Very much the same in America. We're given noise, but the data is never there. And so the same thing's happening with China. We simply don't know what's happening. All we know on the overall scheme is 16 countries are in full revolt. Since Trump took office, 16 countries are in full revolt. Steve Bannon, the architect of QAnon, has left the White House to go on to work on a global populist movement, which includes Hong Kong, Venezuela, and Yellow Vests in Europe. So I think all of these protests that you see on either side are very strategic, initiated protests that are meant to basically pigeonhole us into the next slot that they need. Something which General Wesley Clark says, not me. It's just basically just been outlined a long time ago.
Did
Here's
you
the
see the
memo.
firefighters in France fighting the police, fighting
Yes.
against each other?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, firefighters, they are a very different breed than police.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they actually run into burning houses and rescue people. Police, they are, yeah.
Yeah. It's we also have a lot of the Second Amendment stuff is happening now in the very same town where racial riots were instigated by the government. We're now instigating Second Amendment riots where we're threatening to take guns away, which is causing militia to arm and assemble, which is going to cause another police state crackdown to be able to be formed. All of this fits perfectly under the Patriot Act, which is just demonstrating further how necessary, they're selling the idea that we need this. And the entire time, the American Constitution, which had it set in its stone a long time ago, that if you want to declare war, Congress has to do that. We haven't had that power for 20 years now, almost 20 years. The people have not had the power to declare or not declare war anymore. This is now completely a bureaucratic decision made by somebody that is not beholden to anybody except for Zionism, really. And, the fact that America has invaded or bombed a new country every 15 months since World War II, regardless of who's in office, should make it all perfectly clear. There's no more reasons to speculate right now, Judith. Everything's perfectly clear about what's happening. All you're looking at is a bunch of people with Stockholm syndrome that are in denial about it. There's either the truth of what's happening, or there's the side of denial that's pretending that none of it is.
Do you know who Dr. Steve Piccinnik is?
Yeah.
After, I don't follow him on a regular basis, but sometimes when that assassination of Soleimani happened, I thought I would like to hear what he is saying now. And he actually said that Khamenei is thanking Trump for eliminating his, that he was a force to reckon with, and that now the road is free for Khamenei, and that he doesn't have any competition anymore.
Yeah. Same thing with Baghdadi. We've killed two people that people who love Trump are like, oh, he was a bad guy. And I'm like, 3 hours ago, you didn't know who that guy was. So how do you know he's a bad guy? And it really does show you the difference between a patriot and a mercenary is how much propaganda is spread about them after they're died. That's really the only difference is, did we say good things about this person or bad things about this person? And that's really the world that we're living in right now. We're living in that kind of reality. And it's sad. I wish more would awaken, but they're not. In fact, they're doubling and tripling down on their belief. Again, there's a technology to these beliefs, which is why I wrote my last book, because this is not a rational thing. We're not dealing with rational people. We're dealing with people with Stockholm syndrome. We're dealing with people that are living in epigenetic, multi-generational trauma. And we're dealing with people that are filled with dissonance for every moment of every second of their life while they're being drugged and, sprayed and everything else in between. So this is a giant cattle farm. And we are all just moving around here until we're ready to, claim our power and do something about it.
Mm. Do you think the Iran story will flame up again, or do you think it will die down?
So I'm under the impression that Iran, okay, so this is all speculation. Everything I've
Yeah,
said
sure.
before
That's all
is
we
not,
can do because we
yeah.
have no real data.
Well, I just want to clarify, everything I just said earlier is not speculation. The
Yeah.
General Wesley Clark, the plan for none of that's speculation. But
Yeah.
now I am entering in speculation. And I'm under the impression that that Saudi Arabia fell within the first few weeks that Trump took office. I believe that that was a coup that took place in the penthouse hotel room. I believe that the Vegas shooting that we had is tied into that. And I think Saudi Arabia is a secured asset now of the New World Order. I don't think that Trump is the leader of the New World Order, not by a long shot. I don't think America is the leader of it. I think we're simply just the strong arm bully. We're the guy that just takes orders and beats up whoever we're told to beat up. But I think we're probably looking at a United Arab Emirates sort of a crown that's finally showing itself is like where the new center of the world. It's not even the new center of the world. I think that is the center of the world. In fact, if you were to look at what countries has the worst trafficking, human trafficking, it's going to be those centralized countries there. There's a whole new system of laws there. Hell, they're making it rain every day with spraying. They have the world's tallest buildings. They have the world's most advanced technology. They have all the world's money. So we're starting to see the power structure, the Tower of Babel, being built again, something that's been in the works for 5,000 to 7,000 years. This is not a new plan. This is not a plan that was defeated by an amazing general election. This is not something that, you don't defeat a 5,000-year-old army when no one has to die and all you do is vote. That's literally the most naive thing I've ever heard, that we're thinking that this is the case. I want to remind everybody that not only does every American politician believe Palestine must be destroyed in order to protect America, that's literally what they're saying out there, but they're also lock, stock, and barrel in the same category with the Patriot Act and with everything else that we're doing. There is a unison, a bipartisan footprints, and those footprints are the real NWO that's walking to its destination regardless of what anyone says or what anyone does. We are fully in the pocket of that machine right now as it stands. And although Steve Pieczenik certainly says things that are inspiring, that make you feel good, the guy is preaching an idea. He's preaching the idea that there's this, okay, here's what Steve's saying. Imagine a biker gang and of evil, really bad men, but a good Superman was able to infiltrate this biker gang, and all the other bikers voted him president. And because that Superman is now president, all the bad bikers are going to apologize to the world for everything they've done, and they're going to punish each other in public, sternly. But it's going to be behind the scenes, and we're not going to be able to see it. But you're just going to have to hold hope and trust that this is what's happened. This is what Steve is selling to people. Steve is saying you need to keep your investments in DC. You need to keep your belief in the idea that DC is going to magically fix itself, that the evil biker gang that's wandering through the streets is going to clean itself up automatically because one person happened to be elected president of that club that wasn't elected before. And this is such a naive idea. I have no choice but to say I think Steve is manipulating people to try and keep their belief in DC, because the solution would be very easy to fix this. We need sovereignty. We need to return to states' rights. We need to pull back all the power that DC has ever had and declare it null and void and say, no, this is not how we're going to run our country. We're going to run our country from the states now. We're going to run it from a local standpoint. That means that each citizen is now in charge of their own airspace, their own water space, their own environment. Instead, we're being told by these same people that are doing these same things that we're the ones that are dirty. that we're the ones that are bad, that we're the ones that can't be trusted with our own airspace, while they're literally flying into airspace that's not their own and assassinating people to fulfill a 40 or 50-year-old business plan that's been in place long before Trump was even born. That's really the reality of what we're looking at it. And it's a shame that Steve isn't able to share that with people. It's a shame that he's insisting that, no, this is going to work itself out. In fact, it's going to work itself out, but you're not going to see it. I still have people try and tell me today, oh, McCain faced justice. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you're implying that if we bury someone with full honors, a 21 gun salute, fly him to Washington, D.C., put him at rest in the rotunda in front of the finest Marine Corps that have ever been assembled to stand guard over him for 24 hours in this reverence ceremony, that's how we punish criminals right now? Because that's what we're trying to tell people. We're trying to tell people that if the Bushes die by natural causes, that means they got what they deserved. And that's literally the opposite of what's happening. I mean, they put Bush on a memorial train and he rode from Texas all the way up to Washington while our kids assembled on the side of the road and played him Hail to the Chief on their saxophones and trumpets and drums. And we're telling ourselves, and Steve's telling us that, no, this is justice. This is what justice looks like. That Bush is secretly being put away during this.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but that's Stockholm Syndrome. This is what Stockholm Syndrome sounds like. It sounds like people that are in a lot of trouble that are insisting they're not. They're insisting that, no, everything's okay. Everything's fine. The guy that just raped me is actually here to protect me. That's what Steve's trying to sell us. And it's sad. It's not just Steve, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
It's what everyone's pushing.
Yeah.
And it's what sells. That's what's really sad about it. It's what sells. Judith, I want to remind people real quick that just as an example, and this might sound superficial, but this is what I mean to explain what I mean. Last spring, I had 8,000 followers on Twitter. The day after that, I wrote my first article where I exposed Steve Bannon as the author of QAnon. I showed his footprints, where he'd been. I showed his history. I showed his meeting with Epstein. It was all laid out in a nice, neat little package. Because of that work, I then had 6,000 followers on Twitter. Yesterday, someone congratulated me saying, hey, James, you got 8,000 followers. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what I had last year. In other words, it's taken me this long to rebuild the same followers that I lost before. Meanwhile, if I was instead last summer to say, hey, there's a secret underground plan, and here's how it works, and everything's great, and chemtrails now have vitamins. Like there's a guy out that's actually saying, no, since Trump's been elected, the bad chemtrails have vitamins now. So they're actually fortified with vitamins. There's like coffee flavor. We've got cappuccino. We've got caramel. They're telling us that everything that we think is bad is now magically good. Those people are keep rising up. They're gaining more and more followers. They're gaining more and more crowd. This is what Steve's experiencing a big success from this. He's telling people what they want to hear. Meanwhile, General Wesley Clark is insisting, and all of us are seeing it. Every single thing that he said 10 years ago in a chair, sat down, is happening in front of our eyes, step by step, country by country, year by year. Yeah.
And as you said, the sad part is that it really works. It works wonders. And
that's the technology of belief, Judith.
Yeah.
This is why I wrote that book. And I don't mean that to sound like a sale, but it's true. This is why I stopped what I was writing about and specifically focused in on belief. Because if you really understand how belief works, you can start to understand the chemical feed that you get, the serotonin, the dopamine that comes with following people like Steve and listening to these fantasies that John McCain secretly faced justice and he was bitch slapped behind public and they pulled his toenails out and did these terrible, it's like, no, that's not even justice. That would be secret revenge. Justice is when everyone in the public sees that no one is allowed to get away with that stuff. If no one sees it in public, that's not justice. That's something very different. In fact, not only is it a lie, but even if it was true, it still wouldn't be justice. Justice has to be seen. If it's not seen, it's not justice. It's basically just revenge or retribution, which is a very different thing than justice.
Yeah, exactly. I sometimes check, you said that with your followers, I sometimes check where the collective consciousness is when I click on the trending page on YouTube.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm in Germany, so of course they will show me what's trending in Germany. And guess what? I buy all donuts
Yeah.
was a trending video. And even if, let's say 50% of those views were fake,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's say that, it would still be trending.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is where we are at.
And, well, that's why the zeitgeist is such a crucial part of belief. Um, if you control the trough, then you control the zeitgeist. All you have to do is just control the trough, because you get to choose what's going to be dumped into that trough. And if you can choose if it's going to be corn or if it's going to be wheat, though you now have your two parties. And now you have this myth that everyone's getting information. When they're not getting information, they're getting feed. That's what this feed thing is all about. Right now, what's trending in the United States? Mr. Underwear. Now, when you hear that it's Mr. Underwear, it gives you this Stockholm syndrome. The zeitgeist installs, it's an injection of dopamine, if you think about it, because it's telling you everything must be okay. How do I know everything's okay? Because Mr. Underwear is trending. In other words, if there were psychopaths running our world, wouldn't that be trending? That's what people think. And so this makes them feel better. This is the mall music that's playing while the guy with the chainsaw is chasing people around, chopping them up. But as long as the mall music's loud enough, you don't hear the chainsaw coming. So you're just like, oh, it's fine. Let's go to the food court. It's a lovely day. That's Stockholm syndrome. That's the technology of belief. And if you're able to play chess with someone who only plays checkers, and citizens play checkers, politicians play chess, you know that you can simply distribute wheat or corn, and you're going to be able to dictate what's going to come out of them. If you feed them either this or that, then you know for a fact what's going to happen. These are very predictable things. It's very simple to do this, but it doesn't matter how many times I explain this to people. Someone I'm very close to, just the other day, we were driving, and I was telling him, well, don't you think it's possible that these people could be working together? And his response is, that sounds crazy to me. No, I don't think that's possible. And so it just shows you just how deeply ingrained this is, and just how hard of a fight we have ahead of us, because it's so calorically painful to sit in the truth, to stay in the truth, to wander around the mall and yell at people. There's a dude with a chainsaw right there. And everyone's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. If there was a dude with a chainsaw, why is the lady saying over the loudspeaker that they're giving free samples down in the food court right now? I mean, if there was like a murderous chainsaw, wouldn't she be warning us about that? And that's the part that's so hard to convince people of.
Yeah, exactly. I have a feeling I'm sitting in a very, very bad Kabuki theater.
Mm-hmm. It's a perfect way to put it. It really is. Yep.
And it's not that I do not pay attention, but I don't let it grab me and drag me along, up, down, and now panic, fear, here, bah, bah. Because the headless chicken will not solve anything.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I try and limit how much exposure I'm even giving national news right now, because even to listen to it is to give it your prana, and because you have to make room for it. Even if you're going to call it a lie, you're still giving it power. I can hate a professional wrestler, or I can love a professional wrestler, and the promoter still wins. As long as I hate or love him, that's all that matters. What their biggest fear is that I would grow apathetic, or I would find out that wrestling was fake. The moment that I believed wrestling was fake, no one would get my prana anymore. Whether it's a good wrestler or a bad wrestler, I simply would find something else to do with my time. And if I could do anything as an activist writer or whatever I am, It would be to find a way to empower people in that way, to get them to divest from these systems as much as possible and make them impotent as quickly as possible. But it's a big task, you know, to
Mm.
do. It's very difficult to do that. The zeitgeist is a powerful megaphone.
Yeah.
It's very hard to compete with that when you only have 8,000 followers, and when you lose 25% of them because you gave bad news one day. You know?
Yeah. And I also think it's about balance, because what you're describing, I don't think that you mean that it comes to a point where nobody no longer has any idea what's going on at all. That's not the point. Um, it's about balance.
Well, I'll tell you. So a lot of people are like, well, what about human trafficking?
Mm-hmm.
I want to fix human trafficking, therefore we have to do this. And my answer to them is, okay, if you really want to fix human trafficking, focus on your neighborhood. Like, focus on your neighborhood.
Mm.
So you're still divesting from the system, but you're reinvesting locally in your neighborhood. You're focusing all your efforts in what you can directly see and experience. And if you can directly see it and experience it, you are now informed again. You are no longer in this cloud of the zeitgeist where you think you're informed, but you're actually being informed with propaganda.
Mm.
And now you're back to another place where you're involved locally, where you're doing what you can locally to immerse yourself in the environment. To not pull away, but to invest yourself back into the soil. Pull your belief out of the nationalist myth and pour it into your home, your hearth, your soil, your yard, your neighborhood, and your community. That's the only way this is going to work. We have to breathe life back into government as a tapestry of agreement. We can all agree on things, and only what we agree on is what we'll call government. And if one person disagrees, well, we're not going to do that. And people are going to be like, oh, we can't do that. Yes, we can. The Iroquois Confederacy, before America came here, functioned for 1140 BC until 1776. They functioned for 600 years under a system of unanimous government, which means anyone who went to the Longhouse to discuss a new policy, that policy was only adopted if everyone agreed. If not, then hey, if 99 out of 100 people wanted a bridge and one person didn't, well, guess what? The government wasn't going to build that bridge. It didn't mean those 99 people couldn't go out and build the bridge themselves. It just means that government isn't allowed to do that because government is not a majority rule. When you turn government into a majority rule, you turn it into a zeitgeist. You turn it into a machine that literally eats the minority. Then it becomes a system of propaganda. All you have to do is inject the right propaganda, and then you can turn a patriot into a mercenary or a mercenary into a patriot. And then you just have to wait for people to apply their own belief based off the propaganda that you've already poured into the trough. So again, you already know what they're going to end up with. They're either going to have, they're going to really love corn or they're going to really hate corn. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter. They're still going to be there. Either they're going to be haters of corn or lovers of corn. They're still feeding off the same trough. And that's really what the problem is that we have. And that's really what the Kabbalists have been doing for so long ago. If you look at the original Bible, the scriptures, you're looking at either 3,000 or 5,000, sorry, I can't remember, but thousands of texts that were gathered that were reduced down to 66 books. That is a zeitgeist immersion. You're literally flooding the market with propaganda. And I know that sounds controversial, but you're flooding the market with stories. If you flood the market enough, the truth, if it's in there, will be diluted enough to where you don't have to worry about it anymore. You just simply saturate it with things that aren't the truth enough, and eventually the falsities of it will be adopted as true. And you keep applying that, and amnesia becomes very easy. It becomes a policy that's as simple as starting AP and Reuters and just flooding the airways with Mr. Underwear or with whatever you want to trend for that day. And boom, mission accomplished. It really is just that easy.
Another very bad Kabuki scenario is this coronavirus. And as I said, at this stage, you know, anything is possible because we have seen so-called chemical attacks in Syria that never happened.
Babies in incubators in Iraq.
Yeah.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
Secret underground mustard gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really hard to tell what in that specific case what is really going on. It could be that in 2 weeks nobody is talking about the coronavirus anymore, or yeah, the other scenario is thinkable as well. Maybe there's even talk they are going to hide the financial collapse in that coronavirus. Maybe, I don't know. Is it feasible? Yes. But this is from a Senate report from 1994, because we all have to trust the authorities, yeah? And one authority on public health issues in the United States would be the CDC, yeah? Yeah, so between 19 and I have to read this so that I have the numbers straight. Between 1984 and 1989, the CDC sent Iraq at least 80 different biowar agents, including botulinum toxoid, dengue virus, and West Nile antigen antibody.
Wow.
So, yes, let's make the schoolyard's crack dealer. Let's make him top advisor of how to stay sober.
Yep.
What?
Yeah. I'm reminding everyone just this morning, it's funny you brought that up, that the CDC in 4 hours killed 3 million honeybees under the threat of a Zika virus. Yeah. And they used NALED, a World Health Organization designated carcinogen, and they aerial sprayed that. And even though 3 million honeybees died, not one person was fired. Not one person was held liable for negligence. Not one person was even scolded. Simply, yeah, oh well, that's what happened. That's the CDC, the exact same organization that's insisting that the measles vaccine was going to kill us all, and now the coronavirus is coming for us next. And it's a continuous. Again, you have a trough situation. You have a centralized trough of information, and you have Paul Offit, one of the directors of the CDC, who made his money by patenting a virus. And so, of course, they're going to put him in charge of the CDC. He understands how this market works. It's a market. It's a product. This is a business plan. It's naive for anyone to pretend it's not.
Yeah. And what also goes along with it is this energy of fear, constant fear. Yeah.
Crucial.
If World War III didn't grab you, maybe the coronavirus will grab you.
Yeah, that's crucial. Fear legitimizes authority outside yourself, because if you have fear inside yourself, then you will designate authority outside yourself. So fear is a very necessary function to cause evacuation. It causes a self-abandonment to occur, which is why it's so hard to hear bad news, because once you've abandoned yourself, the last thing you want is someone like me saying, hey man, sit back down in your pelvis. Like, let's talk about sovereignty. It's like, no, I've already spent so much work evacuating myself. Why would I go back inside myself right now? Yeah. That's what's happening over and over again. And anyone who dares to try and seat themselves is, punished severely for it, socially, through dopamine, through serotonin, through not advancing, in a bureaucratic system, whatever it takes. It's the system is wired this way. People are going around saying, oh, the system's broken. The system's not broken. This system's working perfectly. This system was designed to work exactly the way it's working right now. This is a well-oiled machine. Clinton's not nervous about Trump. Trump's not nervous about Clinton. This is a well-oiled machine. This is how it works. It would be like implying that two different waiters working at the same restaurant are somehow secretly working against each other to bring you better food, when it's all coming from the same damn kitchen. It's all the profits going to the same owner. You're giving your credit card to the exact same machine after you eat the same corn that came from the same cook that bought it from the same guy that sat you down to begin with. So again, it's the Stockholm syndrome, and it's why it's so popular now to listen to people that are pushing hope and aren't pushing truth. It's just a better place for people to go who want to enjoy the show. That's really what so much of this is about, is people that have been taught, I know it feels horrible, but it's a show and just enjoy it. Everything's going to work out. And they're like, okay, I'll go along with that. Stockholm syndrome. This is all psychologically predictable. This isn't even like a new idea.
Yeah. And I think what people also forget is that let's say the coronavirus gets out of hand. Your immune system is your first line of defense. Yeah. Now would be a good time probably to learn about it, how to strengthen it, and what certain things can do for you. Try to wise up on oregano, etheric oil. Very helpful against viruses. Try to figure out what hydrogen peroxide can do for you. Yeah, it doesn't have to be always that fancy. And in this day and age, ignorance is a choice. If you don't know about it, then it is because you don't want to know about it.
Yeah, when they weaponize lies, ignorance really does become a form of self-defense, and it's killing us all. It really is.
Yeah. And you might say, yeah, but if it's a weaponized virus, then maybe that will not work. Yeah, but what they are giving you in the hospital will not work either in that case. You know?
Well, I think there's a lot more to, again, in Technology of Belief, one of the chapters was about the placebo effect. And there's a lot to our belief. A belief is like a plasma force. It can be weaponized to help you. Just as it can be weaponized to turn against you, you can weaponize it yourself to help yourself. And this is what we have to remember. This isn't even stuff we have to learn. We have to unlearn the amnesia. And then we remember how our bodies work. We remember how this system works. We remember what fasting is, what fasting does, what eating does, what all these things actually mean. We can systematically reawaken ourselves again. The placebo effect's already there. It's not even like, oh, we don't have this power yet, we have to find it. The power is there. We've just been told it's not ours. Society hides your true power behind words like placebo. Placebo even sounds like such a placid, kind of limp sort of, they've really labeled it in such a tame way. But placebo is like super powerful, man. It's like a really, really powerful thing that happens inside of you. It's this stuff is so much easier than we think it is too. But it all starts inside. And you got to reseat yourself back in your pelvis. You have to, there's an assemblage point. We all have an assemblage point, a needle that we place on our record, our three-dimensional record in our body. And if your assemblage point is up in your head, you're not very body-centered. If it's down in your groin, you're very sexual-centered. If it's in your stomach, you're about food. Your assemblage point can be in your chest. It can be centered again. It can be put right back in your center. And when it's in your center, that's where your power is going to be the most. Your Taurus is going to be its most powerful. But we're placing it in Trump. We're placing it in Steve Pizizniak. We're placing it in Macron. We're placing it in superheroes that are going to come in and save us.
The aliens are going to whisk us away.
Yeah, exactly. We got to reel that back in, place the assemblage point back in our chest, take deep breaths again, find our own power, tap into our own placebo. And the moment we do that, the cabal really loses its power because the zeitgeist is no longer a big trough anymore. It's a trough, but no one's eating out of it anymore. The corn is spoiling. It's rotting before anyone can get to it. And that's where the real power is. When we're going around truthing each other versus waiting for someone else to truth us, and we can either confirm or deny it. Because that's what's happening now. We're either confirming or denying the corn. No one is really allowed to say, what about donuts? What about, what about anything else? Just anything weird that we haven't thought of before, just anything. That's not allowed because the zeitgeist is so loud that no one's allowed to sneak in a word edgewise.
Yeah. So, and now the cherry on the cake, the so-called peace plan.
The what?
The so-called peace plan.
Oh, well, it's not a peace plan.
No, of course not.
Yeah, it's a plan. That's all. It's just a plan.
A plan
It's
to surrender to Israel and to legalize anything illegal that they have ever done under international law.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really have to say, as I said, I was sitting in front of my laptop and I watched the feed, and then when there's no Palestinian there, that's strange. And then it dawned on me, oh shit, guys, you didn't even bother to talk to them. You just cooked it up between you and Israel, and now you are putting it on the table, and then here, love it or leave it.
Yeah, it's the Balfour Declaration. That's all it is. This is just the obvious next step from the Balfour Declaration of what it all means and how it all fits together. Mm. These aren't Trump's plans. They're not Kushner's plans. They're Kabbalistic plans that have been in place for a long, long time.
Yeah, but Kushner was very useful.
He's a tool. Yeah, we can call him a tool.
We call him the tool.
He's so useful, we can call him a tool because that's what he is. Yeah.
And even there, I mean, okay, you could tell that and I saw that feed under, the White House channel, and underneath the comment section, you could tell that it was filtered because there was not even one voice that was remotely critical.
Yeah.
But yet, the amount of people that were drooling all over themselves, yay, Trump is making peace. I want Trump to be my president. I live in Nigeria. We made history today. God bless Trump.
Yeah.
And I thought, yes, dude, you made history by posting the most stupid comment ever. Maybe we can get you in the Guinness Book.
Yeah. That's the zeitgeist. It's so easy. It's so easy to do that because they own the megaphone. And once you own the megaphone, you can say, Mr. Underwear, there's nothing to complain about. That peace talk was yesterday. Today's Mr. Underwear. That's what's trending today. So no one has any, Palestine isn't nearly as popular as Mr. Underwear right now. That's zeitgeist.
Yeah. It is a total subjugation of the Palestinian people. And then the things that Trump said, oh, their GDP will triple and quadruple, you don't know that. Mm-hmm. How can you say things like that?
Yeah. It's sick. It's a very satanic thing to say if you think about it. Well, you get a good GDP over it. It's like him saying our economy, he keeps claiming America's economy is so good because more people have given up looking for a job. And we're told, oh, well, that means the economy's good. Why? Because more people have given up. Oh, okay.
Yeah. There is a very good website. It's called Daily Job Cuts. Mm-hmm. And there you get the real numbers, which company is laying off and how many.
Interesting.
Yeah? So it's interesting to visit it once in a while, and then you will have an impression how good the economy is.
Well, Trump's biggest supporter right now is inflation, because as long as the dollar is being devalued every day, the Dow is going to keep going up. It's just a natural consequence. If your dollar's worth less, your stock's going to be worth more when it comes to the amount of pretend dollars that it's going for. So everything about inflation helps Trump make it look like the economy is even better than it is.
Yeah.
Again, it's all zeitgeist, because so much of economics is about intent. What do you call that? When you're like consumer, I'm sorry, when people feel good about the economy, I'm sorry, I can't remember the word, but when they feel good about the economy, then it's considered a good economy. It's all it takes to feel good about something is to have someone with authority tell you, hey, Mr. Underwear says, the economy's great. And then you're just like, oh, well, it must be great because it's trending, so it must be fabulous. Everything must be fine.
Yeah.
Majority rule. We're the same person that said it was impossible to picture these guys working together also said, well, if you're the only person in the room who doesn't get it, maybe you're the crazy one. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. The majority rule's never been the litmus test for what's sane and what's right. Never has it been that way. In fact, most of the time it's been the opposite. It's the majority rule's always been what's the easiest, what's the most profitable, not what's right, not what causes the least amount of damage. It's more about what feels more comfortable for people, what belief is easier to carry without burning as many calories compared to all the others.
Yeah. And when people say, yeah, but it's a little bit more complicated with geopolitics, and maybe he meant well with the peace plan and blah, 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 blah. You know what? I think break it down to a personal level. Let's say you have a really bad fallout with a friend of yours. Mm-hmm. You're not on good terms. You no longer talk to each other. And somebody steps up to intervene and to see if that relationship can somehow be mended. Yeah, okay, nothing wrong with that. But at least talk to both parties, not just to one. And then you turn around and you tell the other party involved, oh, this is how it's going to be. Yeah. And now you have 4 years and you can try to negotiate with the other one. Most likely he will ignore you, but this is a plan and it's a very good plan. Yeah, for Israel, it's a very good plan.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Israel is basically in charge of every single computer chip that's ever going to be made in the future from now on. They're going to be able to filter every single piece of data that comes through those chips. Mm-hmm. And that really is the end of what we're calling free speech. In America, we've lost free speech in the state of Florida right now. In the state of Florida, as of May, it is a felony to criticize Israel. In fact, if you were a veteran who survived on the USS Liberty, which was attacked by Israel, you would go to jail if you were to walk onto a Florida campus and just explain what happened to you. Just explain what that would be considered anti-Semitic, and that's a felony. And that happened under Trump. And people are still insisting that Trump's here to protect the Constitution and to serve the First Amendment. And no, he's not. And there's direct proof that shows that he's not. This isn't a speculation. It's not a thought. It's not a worry. We're watching all this stuff happen in real time in front of us. And if these superheroes that Steve P's talking about and others are talking about, all the superheroes they reference are anonymous figures. These are figures that are behind the scenes, which means that if they're wrong or if they're lying to us, we can't even hold them responsible because they're anonymous. It would be like trying to convict Batman in a court of law. It's like, how are you going to serve Batman? Are you going to serve him a summons to come to court and then sue him? No, he's anonymous. There's no way of knowing who he is. So all we can really blame is ourselves for believing this stuff. And that's fine. I don't mind if you want to burn your own backyard, or if you want to crap where you eat, or whatever you want to say it, that's fine. But you need to ask yourself what you're doing to your grandkids. Why I would rather you go ahead and write the note now to your grandchildren saying, "Dear grandkids, I believed in an anonymous superhero that was working behind the scenes to secretly infiltrate the evil biker gang to make them all apologize. And he's going to punish them all, but it's going to be underground and you're not going to be able to see it. That's what I believed." Go ahead and tell your grandparents, your grandchildren that in a letter. Go ahead and write that out and say, "Yeah, this is what I believed. This was how I protected your future, is that I signed up for this fantasy." Because that's what's happening now. And this is the exact same thing that happened 20 years ago, and 20 years ago before that, and 20 years ago before that. This has always been the exact same tactic. It's the exact same system that's been in place for so long. Again, the system's not broken. The system is working exactly as it was designed to work.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
flawless.
Yeah. And as I said, to me, it's more and more cartoonish. I sometimes, I can hardly stop laughing when I read some headlines. I don't even bother to go into the details of the story, because by reading the headline, it is so nuts. It is so in your face. It is so deceptive, but at the same time so openly deceptive but it shows you what they think of people. Oh, we can serve them anything. They will believe it.
Yeah. This is the belief stuff I keep talking about. We're under the impression that our intellect is making these decisions, and it's not. It's our comfort. It's our comfort gut. That's what's making these decisions. And we're using reason to come in afterwards and justify our purchase, justify what it is that we've just decided we want to go with. And so much of our life is about trance state. We just don't know it. We put ourselves into trances so we can mow the lawn. We put ourselves in trances so we can go to a job we don't like. We put ourselves in trances so we can take a shower. It's all of life is a trance. And Kabbalists understand this. They understand the technology of this trance. They understand how if you can provide a trance that looks more appealing than the reality trance, then you can upsell people on that. You can sell people that. And it becomes very easy when you have a majority that are already on the bus. So you just have to make it look like they're already on the bus. If you were to come to YouTube in America, anyone who's concerned about patriots or truth movement or anything is going to see on YouTube that there's something called the Patriot Soapbox. And it's a live stream of all these people that are gathered, and all they're doing is talking about Steve P's stuff, about how there's this secret, white hat faction underneath him. I'm bringing this up because when you pull up YouTube, you'll see that under that Patriot Soapbox, there are always 1,000 people in the live chat. It's never gone below 1,000. And so it'll say there's 1,012 people in there. And I'm telling you, there's 12 people in there. I'm telling you, there's 12 legitimate people in there. And I know that because there's no way at 4:30 in the morning on a Tuesday over Christmas holidays that 1,000 people are in there doing that right now. It's not the case. I'm telling you. But YouTube wants me to see that. They want me to see this false camaraderie that's been built into it. I look at it a lot like Little Red Riding Hood, because she had to go through a very thick, dark forest to get to grandmother's house. Now, if you understand where Little Red Riding Hood has to walk, you could set speakers up in the trees along the way. And before she even gets to grandmother's house, you could convince her that, hey, sometimes when your grandmother gets old, she's going to grow hair on her face in really weird places. And sometimes when your grandmother gets old, her nose is going to grow out and it's going to get wet and turn black. And sometimes fangs really mean that they love you. If your grandmother shows you fangs, it's really a sign of endearing. You just don't understand her generation. In fact, if you were to point it out, you would be very insensitive and pretty shitty person. So you shouldn't do that. So these speakers in the trees are the zeitgeist. And as all of us walk to and from wherever we're going, we always have this constant story that's preset for us, that's waiting to tell us what it is we're about to hit.
Yeah.
It's a really bad system, and it's been built this way for a long time.
So I thank you so much for coming on. I know you have been very busy this month.
I know you have too.
What?
I know you have too.
Yeah. Yeah, but now I'm more resting. But yeah, it was a funny journey.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So yeah, thank you so much for coming and talking to me.
No, thank you, Judith. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and we will have you back, of course.
Yeah, happy 2020. We'll talk
Can
soon.
you believe it? What everything that is going on, and it's just January.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not even the second month. I'm really wondering what will happen the next couple of months.
Well, we'll definitely be finding out soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I wonder when Maxine Taylor, when she said, "Yeah, starting with May, everything will go totally crazy."
Mm.
So this is maybe something to warm up. We
Yeah.
will see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming. This was Night Flight for today. Stay safe and sound, everybody, and we see you again. Bye-bye.